This episode of the RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by AIM EC Herbicide from FMC. AIM EC Herbicide powers up your spring burn-off with control of the tough weeds like kochia and cleavers. And because it's a Group 14 product, AIM EC Herbicide is the cornerstone of a solid resistance management program.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host, here on this Monday, Agronomic Monday edition of the show, I should say. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Today's show is brought to you by Vaderstad. It is great to have them as today's show sponsor. Vaderstad Farm Machinery is built to create the optimum environment in your field. Learn how their tillage, seeding, and planting solutions can maximize yields in your soil types and field conditions by visiting Vaderstad.com. We also at Agritechnica did some great videos with Vaderstad, so make sure you check out that Agritechnica coverage as well. Brought to you by Optimum Gly, a new canola trait technology from Corteva Agriscience. Okay, so today, lined up, we're going to do a product spotlight with Vaderstad. Looking forward to that, hearing all about what they have going on from a seeding equipment perspective. We'll also be joined by Jeremy Boychyn of Alberta Wheat and, Alberta Grains. That's right, the MERS Farm Organization. Jeremy Boychyn with Alberta Grains, as well as Peter W.P. Johnson will be here at the back end of the show to finish up today. If you have any feedback on today's program, we would love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, X, Instagram, Threads, TikTok. We're on all of it. You can find us anywhere. Not Be Real. My kids are always doing Be Real. Do you have kids that are doing Be Real? Maybe you're doing Be Real. I don't know. I'm not on Be Real, so you won't find us there. So we keep it real in other spots. I'll say that. You can also call people are like, what is he even talking about? We could call the RealAg feedback line as well, 855-776-6147, of course. And hopefully you thought out, wow, Old Man Winter is the ugliest person ever this past weekend. Wow. Crazy cold temperatures in Western Canada, especially Alberta. I think Alberta really, really took home the flag this weekend, as well as Eastern Canada too. Just not the same temperature, but different kind of cold and also cold. So, yeah, we were reminded how bitter Canadian winter could be, but really that storm worked its way. Like, look at what's happening in Iowa and Nebraska. The Buffalo Bills game was moved from Sunday to today. So, yeah, there's a great big chunk of North America, I should say, that is definitely getting its taste of winter. And now for a lot of these parts, hey, it's especially Western Canada or even Nebraska and Kansas, as I was just mentioning, it'd be great if moisture would come with that as much as possible. Some parts did get snow, which is encouraging, but we could park the cold for a little bit, but bring some moisture. That's what we're asking for, Mother Nature, is Old Man Winter has definitely taken over. So Crop Production Show lived up to the cold, and this weekend is Brandon Ag Days. So Manitoba Ag Days are going on. Good luck to everybody that will be out there this week. Let's take a break, and we'll get to Jeremy Boychyn of Alberta Grains right after this, brought to you today by Vaderstad.
Co-op knows your community because we live here too. Our teams are your trusted partners with a range of expertise to help support your entire farm operation. And we're giving back. In the past 5 years, Co-op has invested over $1.1 billion in the prairies through building, upgrading, and expanding local facilities. And we've returned over $1.17 billion to Co-op members in the prairies. Co-op, we're all building something for the future. Here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Does your N stabilizer contain an active ingredient load high enough to be agronomically effective? If not, it could be costing you time and money. If you're putting down a nitrogen stabilizer, put your trust in Koch Agronomic Services. Solutions like Super U, Tribune, and Anvil. Each delivers high active ingredient concentrations that low-rate products just can't match. Compare how imitator products stack up to agronomically effective solutions at defendyourn.ca.
Let's get rolling here with Agronomic Monday here on RealAg Radio. Joining us right now is Jeremy Boychyn with Alberta Grains, based out of Calgary. Jeremy, welcome back to the show.
It's great to be back, Shaun, although I am very cold, but I am very happy to be back chatting with you.
Yeah. It looks like it's going to break this week, and we're going to warm up to something a little bit more tolerable, but I'll tell you what, I don't ever remember getting a warning at any point in Alberta that we need to reduce our electricity usage because we're overpowering our grid. What a crazy cold weekend that Alberta experienced this past couple days.
I mean, my heart goes out to any of those producers managing livestock right now. What a challenge that is to keep everything running and keep all those animals safe during this time. So, I mean, that's where mine goes. But you're right, Shaun. I've never seen an alert like that. It reminded me of when I lived in Ontario back in the day, and I think we had outages of power every once in a while being close to Toronto. But, oh my goodness, that was so long ago. But good on Albertans, because you could see that graph as soon as that alert went out. Man, did that the amount of usage just drop and show, everyone saw that and started unplugging everything they could. So good on the Albertans for responding.
Yeah. And you know what? This is a reminder. I'm just going to say it. A bit of a reminder why this guy's maybe not going to buy a electric car in the near future. Because
I was reading a tweet about that. Someone trying to charge their car and it taking twice as long because you have to keep the car on to keep yourself from freezing.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's tough. That's tough.
Well, and you know what also is tough is the moisture and snowpack issues. Now we've been under a pretty good drought bias in parts of Alberta here for the past number of years. But even the farmers under irrigation are now concerned because, and that comes back to the snowpack. It's been a little light. Now, we did get a bunch of snow late last week in the mountains, in the Kootenays, which is a good thing. But I think heading into 2024, you don't go very far talking about the variables and the issues that people are concerned about. For sure in Alberta, well, quite frankly, honestly, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, we're pretty dry.
Yeah, that drought map looks pretty ugly across the province. There's not a lot that's looking optimistic, unfortunately. And yeah, I mean, as we get closer and closer to that March timeline and April timeline, we really need more of that snow to fall to help with that snowpack. Because reservoirs are looking a little bit low. Again, it is nice to see some of that white stuff across the prairies, and hopefully we capture some of that in the summer. But we really need to build up our reservoirs. We need to build up what we have in the soil. And yeah, we've been in this negative trend for multiple years, and in some places, upwards of 5 years. And it's quite the challenge. So, I was listening to the conversation you had with Pete last week, and someone's question of, how do I distribute my irrigation on corn? Like, what happens if I get limited? Should I be distributing it a little bit differently to minimize yield impacts? And it kind of got me thinking about, what about wheat? What happens if we get into that situation where we're limited, and should we be distributing that moisture differently if we do have a limited amount? And we know through research that the most impactful time for wheat and barley to encounter drought is during that grain fill period. When that period encounters drought, it sees the most amount of impact on that total yield at the end of the year. So maybe as we get closer, if we need to be making those decisions, those that kind of research gives us indication of where maybe in a time span we should be distributing our moisture if that needs to happen. Because the further we move along in this winter, the more we're looking at having to make some of those decisions.
Yeah, speaking of maps, some people are thinking about some of the insects and some of that pressure on the year ahead. I know we've got a wheat midge map. What is it telling us?
Yeah, so thanks to Shelley Barkley and everyone at Alberta Agriculture who puts these maps together every year. They travel across the province, they take samples, they do the counts, and allow us to see this information and make agronomic management decisions on the farm. So, big shout out to them and the work that goes into putting this together. And the wheat midge map is such an interesting one because it seems to vary so much year to year. And if you actually look in the map and some of the information that's supplied in there is that, we see so much field to field variability. It's important for producers to consider a few things. So, first off, this year, the wheat midge map looks very green, which means the samples did not bring back a lot of cocoon larvae. They weren't finding them in the fields, in those wheat fields. So the map looks like we don't have a lot of an issue. But it's important for things. There's a few things important to consider here, and one of them is what Tyler List always tells me. He's like, you can't turn your back on wheat midge because we know that it can sit in the soil for at least 1 year and come back multiple crops later. So if we do still get a decent amount of moisture in May and June in those areas where there's historic wheat midge issues, we can still see those wheat midge emerge and cause issues on yield and downgrading. So if you're in these areas, even though that map looks green, you still need to be protecting yourself because there's still a risk there that environmental conditions are going to bring that wheat midge out of the soil and cause impact. So, and this is why it's so important for those areas producers to be utilizing midge-tolerant varieties because it is field to field and it's year to year. And the best case scenario is to protect yourself by utilizing that technology. And 1 year past certified, make sure we're keeping that technology in the loop because if we lose it, my goodness, the impact on yield and quality will be quite significant. So keep that in mind, keep yourself protected, and don't turn your back on wheat midge.
Brian Bears, who does some great research at Lethbridge with AFC, he's got some research results out on enhanced efficiency fertilizers. Now, I'm interested in this. What did he find?
Yeah, so, obviously this is a huge part of discussion in agriculture in Canada, Western Canada right now. So what they did was over multiple years, 2019 to 2022, they looked at different nitrogen sources, so urea, agrotane, entrench, super U, ESN, and they applied these different enhanced efficiency fertilizers at seeding in either dark brown, black, or gray soil to see how this would impact yield and quality response. And what they found was rather interesting. In those dark brown soils, Super U actually posed a bit of an increase above urea. So, 3 to 4% increase in yield. It didn't have an impact on quality, but it did show an increase in yield. And actually, when they looked at the economics of it, there was about a $25 per acre increase in economics of the Super U. But the other products, agrotane, entrench, ESN, they were, well, the agrotane and entrench was about the same as urea. ESN was actually a little bit lower than that, and that could be how the release of that ESN occurred. And then in the black and gray soils, there was no response of yield and quality. And keep in mind, this is 2019 to 2022, so those environmental conditions are impacting this response. But one of the big things to come from this is, okay, in both of these soil types, we're not seeing a negative impact from the agrotane, the entrenched, the super U, and in some cases we get an increase of efficiency, that plant efficiency of that utilization of that nitrogen. So the question is can producers decrease the amount of nitrogen going down and still get the same yield results as if they're doing urea while still mitigating loss of nitrogen to the environment? So obviously we need to ask more questions on that, but very interesting results coming out of Brian's research there and very topical for the decisions that are being made right now.
That was going to be my question, because I had an audience member ask me that last week. If I'm using one of these enhanced efficiency fertilizer products, can I cut my nitrogen rate?
And that is one of the questions that I think as researchers are moving through this and seeing no big negative impacts or no negative impacts of use of these products, that's the question. And I was sitting here looking at some of this research, and as you know, Alberta Grains, we implement an on-farm on-farm trial program where we work with producers to trial different agronomic either management practices or products on their farm to see what the effects might be economically and agronomically. And I'm thinking, this is a question that may be worth asking with a few producers this year. So if there's anyone in Alberta this year that's looking to ask this question, reach out to me and I'll be happy to work with you through the Plot to Farm program and design maybe a trial looking to ask that exact question. What's the economics of using this product? Let's drop the nitrogen rate according to those economics and see what happens, and see, are these actually providing a more efficient use of nitrogen? How is that affecting my bottom line?
Yeah, and what's also interesting there too is you mentioned the years covered in that research, somewhat of a dry bias, right? And I'd have to see some of the rainfall data for the research, so I don't want to jump to conclusions there, but that's a variable as well, right? So if we are in a year where there's ample moisture or maybe even too much moisture, how do those products impact yield in those situations? It's a really fascinating question, I think. And as more we hear about these products and the more we have government programs where, some of these products are essentially you're compensated for using them and you're encouraged to use them from an environmental I think we should know the answers to some of these questions, right? So this is important research.
Absolutely, and it's nice to see Brian and his team working on this and developing this information, because it just kind of continues to push us down the line of further understanding of what these products mean and how we can use them to continue to have sustainable farms moving forward, economically and agronomically.
Yeah, for sure. Are you like, now that we're in the middle of January, you ready for the growing season? Are you pumped for it?
This cold weather that just rolled in, absolutely, I'm ready. I always get the most excited when we start seeing that wheat and barley hit the ground early. I'm feeling ready. We're getting all of our trials together and we're doing all of our planning and prepping. So, those discussions are happening. We're starting to plan, and it's getting me amped, Shaun. I don't know about you, but I'm ready.
It's going to be here before you know it. Like, just as quickly as winter came, winter can leave, right? And so it's like I said, the countdown is on. There's like this every day, it ticks away. We're one day closer. So we got to do all this talking and prep and get ready for the season, because it's going to be here before you know it. So, hey, Jeremy, thanks so much for joining us here today on RealAg Radio. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Shaun.
Yeah, that is Jeremy Boychyn with Alberta Grains. And speaking of Alberta Grains, there's going to be a bunch of the team from Alberta Grains at the Crossroads Crop Conference. It's happening here in just a couple weeks. And you need to be ready to revolutionize your farming practices and stay ahead in the ever-evolving world of agriculture. Join the Crossroads Crop Conference January 29th through the 31st at the Weston Calgary Airport. Register by going to crossroadscropconference.ca. And also make sure you check out the Wheat School. Jeremy is a frequent guest on there. Wheatschool.com, brought to you by Syngenta Canada, Alberta Grains, and C&M Seeds. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to hear a product spotlight with Vaderstad, and then we'll let Wheat Pete join us. We'll talk to him, see what he's up to. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
When you see how fast Intruvix 2 herbicide from FMC smacks down narrow-leaved hawksbeard, volunteer canola, kochia, and those other problem weeds, you'll be saying, stronger and faster? Shut the front door. Apply it with glyphosate before planting cereals, and you'll enjoy cleaner fields faster while protecting your future glyphosate use. Cheese and crackers. Just how easy can you get? Intruvix 2 herbicide from FMC. Clean is good. See your local retailer.
As you look ahead to the next growing season, there's a lot to consider when it comes to your crop. You need every possible advantage available to you. The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com has everything you need to make the best choice for you and your farm. On-demand videos with leading industry experts available anywhere, anytime. Go into the season confident and ready with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Back to RealAg Radio. It's now time to talk to today's show sponsor, Vaderstad. And we're joined right now by Philip Korszak. He is the Director of Sales for Western Canada for Vaderstad, based out of Saskatchewan. Hey, Philip, how's it going?
Hey, Shaun, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's great to chat with you, and thanks again for Vaderstad for being today's show sponsor. So I guess, Philip, let's start off. Tell us a little bit about the history of Seed Hawk and how this product came to be a part of Vaderstad. It's been a number of years, I guess, but let's go back to a little bit back in time a little bit.
For sure. As you mentioned, the word Seed Hawk comes to mind usually as the recognition of the brand in Western Canada. Obviously, Seed Hawk is an air seeder line built out of Langbank, Saskatchewan, and it's been in the prairies now for actually over 30 years. We celebrated our 30-year anniversary not too long ago. But the history behind how Seed Hawk came to be part of the Vaderstad brand is actually a very similar story to the beginnings of Seed Hawk along with the beginnings of Vaderstad. They were very similar right from the very beginning. So Seed Hawk was started by a local farmer in the in the Langbank, Saskatchewan area. And at the time, he was just not happy with the farm equipment that was out in the marketplace to do the job that he thought would be the best job for his conditions on his farm. So it was very similar with the starting of Vaderstad in Sweden. It was, again, the founder of Vaderstad, Sweden, was a local farmer. That's the exact same story. Just couldn't find a piece of equipment on the market that would do the job necessary that he thought was the best possible job for his field, his conditions, his location. For Seed Hawk, obviously that was with the accuracy in the placement of seed and the location of the fertilizer in relation to that seed in Western Canada, and that is what the dual knife Seed Hawk opener came to be from those humble beginnings. And for Vaderstad, it was in regards to the seed bed prep prior to seeding. So back in the late 2000s, Vaderstad was here in North America, and they were looking for an equipment company to get a foot in the door with the North American market. And eventually, it led to the outright purchase of Seed Hawk by Vaderstad, and us now being 100% under the Vaderstad brand line and umbrella, which is headquarters out of Vaderstad, Sweden.
Very cool. I didn't realize how similar those two stories were and how it all kind of connects together. So we know that Seed Hawk, popular brand, Western Canada, Northern Tier of the U.S. If somebody's never had a Seed Hawk in the field before, why would you look at purchasing one?
For sure. Great question, Shaun. We understand that the cost of this equipment, especially in the last several years post-COVID, has really increased significantly for the farmer. And it's very difficult for them to make a large purchase price decision without having seen this equipment in the field, either themselves or at their neighbor's place. But in the event that that hasn't happened, there's several things that a farmer would see if they took a look at the equipment on a dealer's lot or at their neighbor's. But really, one of the keys that has been to our success that's lasted so long, and we really haven't changed it much, to be honest with you, is our dual knife seed and fertilizer system. With that dual knife seed and fertilizer system, we do believe that we are the most accurate seeding tool in the market for seed placement. And the key component, not only with that seed placement, is also the fertilizer location. There's a lot of companies out there that will either do a mid-row band or that will mix seed and fertilizer together, or a different aspect of getting the fertilizer out to the crop. But we really feel that the dual knife system with the separation horizontally and vertically is really what's going to ultimately give that crop, especially a small seeded crop and high value crop like canola, easy access to those nutrients very early on and quick emergence. But equally important with that quick emergence is the even emergence. And you're going to see that through the crop for the entire year. I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, Shaun, but we are an iPad-based system. So when a farmer goes to run a seed hawk on their farm or a demo or at their neighbors, they're actually going to notice an iPad in the cab. And it's a 100% off-the-shelf iPad that you could buy from Best Buy, Walmart, wherever it is that you can buy an iPad from. And we actually do our software updates via the App Store. So it's very intuitive for the farmer. And again, we hear that it doesn't take a lot of time for somebody to get onto our system and be up and running in a short period of time.
So when we think about the 2024 spring that's right in front of us, is there anything that we can expect from Seed Hawk?
Yeah, for sure. So spring of 24 is right around the corner, obviously. As I mentioned earlier on, we're iPad-based, and there will be a software release coming out on the Apple App Store for all of our farmers. The release is free to any Seed Hawk owners. But one of the things that our customers have told us is that they're very happy with the quality and the consistency of our machines coming out the door. And I'm very happy to report that post-COVID, our factory is 100% back on track, getting the machines and orders out the door in the time frame that we're guaranteeing the customer and the farmer. So if you are one of those farmers that do not have your machine yet, I can guarantee you that they will be delivered in time before spring. We have a goal of getting all the machines out the door and in the dealer's hands by the end of April. Very, very cool. If somebody wants more information on Vaderstad, how do they find it, Philip? You know what? You can go to our website. It's very simple. It's just www.vaderstad.com. But where we always want to push customers to is to our local Vaderstad dealers that are out in your local community. Great stuff. Well, and of course, thanks again to Vaderstad for being today's sponsor of RealAg Radio. Philip, thanks so much for joining us. My pleasure. Thanks, Shaun. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio, brought to you today by Vaderstad.
Whether you're in a career within an organization, starting your own business, looking for your dream job, running your own farming operation, operating a company in ag or food, or want to hone your overall life skills, this conference is for you. Celebrating over 10 years of bringing women in ag together, join the Advancing Women Conference in Calgary on March 17th, 18th, and 19th. Visit advancingwomenconference.ca for more information and to register.
There's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup to weed control, field trial results, and the latest yield strategies. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast in your favorite podcast app. Check out the latest Corn School episode today.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by Vaderstad. Vaderstad Farm Machinery is built to create the optimum environment in your field. Learn how their tillage, seeding, and planting solutions can maximize yields in your soil types and field conditions by visiting Vaderstad.com. Let's bring him in. It is Peter Wheat Pete Johnson. Hey, Pete, how are you doing today?
Awesome, thanks, Shaun. But it has turned cold in Ontario. Oh, my gosh. I don't know what you guys out west sent us, but minus 19 Celsius last night. It's getting pretty chilly for us for a soft old guy from Ontario, I'll tell you.
Well, okay, so I before my inbox floods here with those weak-kneed Eastern Canadians, minus 19 in a humid climate is cold. Now, it may not be the minus 55 with wind chill that Alberta got on the weekend, but it's that listen, minus 10 in Ontario was cold. It's a different kind of cold. And listen, at the end of the day, all of these frigid temperatures, they are cold. No matter how you look at it, very, very cold. I hope you dress warm. You know, an old guy like you, do you have a hard time keeping warm?
So I think the answer is no, Shaun, because I do dress warm. If I have to go out, I make sure I have my good winter coat on, or I have the insulated coveralls in the back of the truck should ever I have trouble driving my truck somewhere. So we try to prepare for the cold. But on the other hand, if I have to choose between cold and warm, I'm picking warm, baby. I am not a cold lover, that's for sure.
Yeah, these people that always say like, "Oh, I love winter," you're lying to yourself. Like and everybody around you. And Pete, it's amazing to me. I'm like you. I need to dress for it. I'm putting on extra layers. Like you can always take a layer off. It's amazing though. My teenage kids though they could be this cold. They don't even need coats. Like just take a winter coat to school. Come on, what are you crazy? Anyway.
Yeah. I do not get it. I actually. As I drove away from home, I passed a young girl. She was, I don't know, 7 or 8, coat wide open, no gloves on. She did have a toque on, but yeah, like it's minus 19 and no gloves on, and she's standing in the edge of the road where the snow plow had pushed up the snow. There's like 2 feet of snow there, and she's standing, great big smile on her face. She was happy as happy could be, and I'm just like, oh, my boots are full of snow, my hands are freezing. Like, how can you be happy? But she was, so it's all good.
It's like minus 40 or minus 50 at that point. It doesn't even matter. On Friday night, and our youngest son, who is in grade 12, but he goes to a baseball academy, and he texts me and he says, "Hey, would you be okay if I drive to Walmart, which is like on a country, it's on the highway, and they got to drive about a half hour?" I'm like, no. It's like minus 40, minus 50. Stay inside. Whoa, we need some stuff. No, you don't. You really, really don't. In a breakdown situation when it's that cold, if your engine wasn't running, like that vehicle inside is instantly you're instantly cold. Like it's scary stuff. Okay. Hey, before we get to agronomic topics, we're going to burn this whole segment just talking about other things. You watched the Lions game last night.
So I did watch the highlights. I did not watch all of it, but I did watch the highlights, and it was like what an amazing show. It was awesome.
Yep, to all of our listeners down in the deep south of Chatham, Ontario, and around there, I'm sure, which is very much tiger and lion country in Canada, I will add. I'm sure there is some pretty sore heads today for some of those individuals.
Yeah, and a lot of Red Wings fans down there too, right? You get down into Essex County, Chatham, Kent, a lot of Detroit supporters, and the Lions pulled it out. Like it was pretty stellar, right? Just a lot of fun to watch.
Hopefully today's games are better than the ones that happened on the weekend, because the Lions game was the best game so far. The other games were just terrible, awful. They were not good. Okay, Pete, we're talking about cold weather, and I guess what impact? Let's just start with Western Canada. I'll get you real quickly. Does that cold weather have any impact on the growing season ahead whatsoever when it's that cold? Is it doing anything?
So in terms of what, Shaun? If you on the growing season to come, or on the winter crop that is in the ground?
Well, winter crop in the ground, that'd probably be the place to start, I think.
Okay, so winter crop in the ground, if you have no snow cover and you're at minus 40, she's all over. the chances of the crop surviving an extended minus 40. Wheat's very cold tolerant. The best varieties take, I believe it's around minus 21 Celsius at the crown, which is almost an inch in the ground. So you got to drive that minus 40 an inch into the ground before you kill that wheat plant. But you get to minus 21. Well, if air temperatures are minus 40 for much of an extended period and you don't have a blanket of snow, because that's exactly what snow acts like, it's a blanket, well, the winter crop is probably in tough shape. And winter barley is not as tough as winter wheat. Even winter rye, we get to kind of that minus 23, minus 25. Winter rye tends to bottom out as well. Like everything has its point. Minus 40. That's part of the reason you don't grow as many winter crops out there, right?
Yeah.
Because you get those really severe temperatures. The upside is that when it gets that cold, it generally does reduce the overwintering insect population. And so if you have the blanket of snow, then we don't kill nearly as many insects. But I believe the number, and I'm going on memory, Shaun, which I'm sure someone will correct me, but it's something like we need it to be minus 15 or minus 19 for 4 days, maybe something like that, to really have a significant impact on the overwintering insects here in southwestern Ontario, like corn rootworm and some of those other insects that we deal with. I'm sure that Western Canada has numbers like that as well for some of the overwintering insects. But super cold, it does reduce the survival, which reduces the initial population and can ease back on some of those insect pest problems that we would see on a less harsh winter.
So it could have an impact on the grasshopper population?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in grasshopper entomology, but my guess is it probably would. If it's cold enough, long enough with no snow, I expect it has an impact.
Okay. Yeah, it's what about alfalfa?
Yeah, so alfalfa as well. It actually is not as winter hardy as winter wheat. Typically,
oh really?
Minus 18, yeah, even minus 15 will take alfalfa out if it gets cold enough at the growing point. And so we see a winter kill on alfalfa from cold temperatures from time to time here in Ontario. It's not as hardy as winter wheat.
Okay, now from an Ontario perspective, with minus 19, and I was just in Ontario. Where I was, there wasn't a lot of snow cover. How is the winter wheat there going to do? Same kind of premise, I guess, eh?
Absolutely. And so when I look out my window here around London, Ontario, or Lucan or Ingersoll, where I live, we have a nice blanket of snow. We got 4 inches of snow. It was kind of a funny start. We had rain, we had warm temperatures, and then it switched to snow, and the roads were ugly. I had like an inch thick of ice on the bottom of my truck windshield because the first snow that came melted and ran down to the bottom, and then it just froze there in a block. It was brutal to get off. But we got then snow before it got cold, and so this again we have the blanket of snow that we should protect the winter wheat underneath it. Now you go into Essex County, and I saw a tweet from I think it was Alex Knight, and he grows winter canola down in that southern Kent County, Essex County area. And that winter canola, he said the leaves were crispy at minus 19. I'm thinking that winter canola is suspect to survive those cold temperatures because there was almost zero snow to protect that crown.
Man alive, eh? It's yeah, some of these areas are going to be, some areas did have snow, so they're going to be, in a lot better position. But some of these areas that didn't get the snow, then got all this cold, like you said, is really, really, really a big challenge. Hey, quickly before we take a break, you've got some of the AgriCorp numbers for corn and soybean yields.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it looks, if you recall, Aaron Breimer from Elite Agri now, he used to be with Vaderstad, but he and I often will make bets on where those numbers will shake out. and Aaron took the under on 50 bushel soybeans. It looks like I'm a winner there. The third year out of the last 6 where we have basically tied for record yield soybeans in the province of Ontario at 53.3 bushels per acre. I sort of think that 2018 was 53.4 and 2021 was 53.3, but that's just memory again. So basically, kudos to Horst Bonner. Wow, 3 years out of 6, he's had record soybean crop. The corn crop, Aaron thought would break 200. No, last number was 197.8. Now, it might change slightly because not all the corn yields are in, but it's not going to break 200 if we're currently basically at 198. It's still, I think, the second highest yield we've ever had on corn, but it's not a record, that's for sure.
We've got more coming up here on RealAg Radio with Peter W.P. Johnson. Today brought to you by Vaderstad.
CDC Endure is a new oat line from Alliance Seed. High yielding with excellent disease resistance and the quality end users ask for, all in one great oat variety. CDC Endure provides the high beta-glucan levels to make heart-healthy products like breakfast cereals. For more information on CDC Endure oats, as well as any other products from Alliance Seed, check out allianceseed.com or visit any Alliance Seed authorized retailers.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground. We are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
Today's episode of RealAg Radio is brought to you by Vaderstad. Find out more by going to vaderstad.com. Okay, we're talking to Peter W.P. Johnson here on Agronomic Monday. And Pete, listener in, get ready for it, Argentina. Yes, this show does go far and wide. Diego from Argentina was asking about the yen project and some of the results. And he asked you for the top 5 things for wheat when it comes to driving yield. What did you come up with?
So, Shaun, I love projects like the yen, and there's so much cool new information coming out. And so when you're challenged with the top 5 things, I'm not sure I can limit it to 5, but it's pretty clear from the yen, and this is not rocket science, by the way, okay? Like, I could have predicted this without a yen. It's basic crop physiology. But if you want big wheat crops, you have to have big biomass. And the reason that works is, I think we've talked about this before, is that the grain is only a proportion of the total crop. And it's called, the amount of grain to the total biomass is called the harvest index. And we don't change harvest index a whole lot. With winter wheat here in Ontario, often 55% grain to 45% stover, in that range. It in some studies, it's as low as maybe 50%. It sometimes gets up 57, 58%, but that number doesn't change much. So you have to back up and say, okay, how do I get big biomass? Out of the yen, one of the really key things is heads per meter squared. And so you have to get more heads per meter squared, and you would think, well, that's a seeding rate issue, but it actually flips the other way, and it's actually that you have to back up and say, okay, so how do we get more heads per meter squared? We seed in the optimum window so that we get fall tillers, and in fact, we seed at the early end of the optimum window, and we reduce our seeding rate. And that really is counterintuitive, but it's clear in the data that even if we push seeding rates to twice what, early seeding rate at 1 million seeds per acre, we go to 2.5 million seeds per acre late, we can't make up that yield difference from that early seeding. So seeding at the right time. And for winter wheat in Ontario, it's actually a lower seeding rate on the early end of the window that really drives yields. One of the other trends that kind of surprises me is a lot of the repeating winners, a lot of the growers that are doing really well are doing it with narrow row wheat. So, I mean, compared to Western Canada that are on 10-inch row wheat or 12-inch row wheat, here in Ontario, we're all on 7.5. So it's just the common no-till setup. And of course, everybody in Western Canada is saying, well, that's already way too narrow. We are not going there. But in actual fact, our 5-inch wheat growers look like they're winning. And we even had a broadcast. Mark Davis from Napanee, right along Lake Ontario, and his broadcast wheat into soybeans, I think, was gold, I think, perhaps, in terms of percent of yield potential. I think he got 117% of his yield potential with broadcast wheat. And so you say, how can that be that we need lower seeding rates, narrow rows, even maybe broadcast? And, you know, there's some German research that says if the seeds are not at least 1 centimeter apart, for the U.S. folks listening, that's half an inch. If you have two seeds that touch each other, they will compete with each other, and you will lose yield on both of those plants. If you can get those seeds 1 centimeter or half an inch apart, they don't compete with each other. And then 5-inch wheat seeded early at low seed populations so that those seeds aren't within 1 centimeter. Maybe that's where some of that wheat yield is actually coming from. Anyway, those are the fine-tuning details that I think are so cool out of the Yen project. At the end of the day, the top 5 things, it really does come down to seed at the correct time. In Western Canada, in my opinion, you know, Brian Barris's work on spring wheat, that's when soil temperatures go above 0. Brian would say 2 Celsius. I'm going to even push it a little earlier to get that wheat in the ground. Once it's above 0, just give her. So seed at the right time. Phosphorus as a starter fertilizer. Like that's always a big deal, both in spring and winter wheat at seeding. Makes a huge difference. You absolutely want to make sure you keep that seeding rate right, and that depends on many factors. But the right seeding rate, it counts. For spring wheat, weed control is a big deal. For winter wheat, it's more managing the canopy with nitrogen applications, and then, of course, controlling disease. So those are sort of the 5 things that I think really, really drive it. Stay green. That's the other thing I didn't mention. Stay green through grain fill has really shown us that we can make added test weight. In the Yen data, the high yield growers had 2 grams more per 1,000 kernels. And you say, well, that's not that big a difference. It actually works out to about a 5% difference in yield when we can just have that little bit heavier kernel in there. So that stay green through grain fill makes a huge difference as well.
So you made 6. Stay green's the 6th.
Okay, well, I don't know. Pull out whichever one you want. I said I would have trouble doing it in 5.
I like that. Okay, one of the big conversations at the Ontario Ag Conference was a session about right-sizing the farm. And we can think about this from a farm management standpoint, but it even works into the agronomic decision. And there could be right-sizing to go down in acres, but there can also be right-sizing to maybe scale up depending on your situation. And there's no hard and fast rule here. I think the process, really the important aspect here, Pete, is the process of going through that evaluation. What is the right size for your farm given your variables and your situation?
And 100% right. And we actually, so Tech Talk Tuesdays is something that we do as part of the Ag Conference. So I am the moderator. You got to put up with Johnson again. But on Tuesday nights at 7:27 sharp, we'll pick a topic. And so our kickoff last Tuesday evening was on right-sizing the farm, on mental health, and also a bit on pulling cover crops in and how that impacts in terms of your outlook around mental health and right sizing and just putting that whole farm management package together. And, you're right in that everybody's right size for the farm is different. In the chat on Tech Talk Tuesday, when we talked about right sizing the farm, there was, over half the people said that they would grow their operation if they could find the right labor component, that labor is the thing that is keeping them from increasing farm size. They're sort of maxed out. I even talked to one of my clients, and they're looking to grow the farm, but I just kind of challenged them. Well, wait a minute. Grandpa is really helpful around the farm still, but Grandpa's age is starting to work against him. You need to look forward and say, okay, if we don't have Grandpa and there's no great grandson coming along yet, there may be eventually, but they're not there yet. You take Grandpa out of the labor pool, is growing the farm actually right sizing the farm? And so, it was a wide ranging discussion. We had at the Ag conference, the presentation there, Mark Comley, he downsized from 3,300 acres down to 1,200 acres just because trying to run 3,300 acres with his labor pool was driving him nuts. He wasn't getting work done timely. Downsized to 1,200 acres, making the same amount of money essentially, and having time for his family. And so that was right sizing the farm for him. Mark Burnham, on the other hand, he's at 1,200 acres. He would like to grow, but labor's an issue. Land prices are an issue. So he's very selective in terms of how he is growing his operation. He is growing it, but he's not. I joked. I said, Mark, I've got 2,000 acres to rent to you. Are you interested? And he said, not a chance. just from it's too much, too fast. Yeah. So, and what's there's so many parameters. So it was a really great discussion. No question about that.
And here's the neat thing too. I know a farmer in Alberta that really scaled up, right? And because before I tell that story, I should say that what's right sizing for your farm may also change. Right? Just because that's, the strategy today, go up or go down, or maybe it stay the same. Maybe you are the right size already. In 15 years, it may be a different, your answer to that question could be different. So he scaled up massively, grew 2-3 times the size of the farm, and then got to the point where, okay, and scaled it back again, to about 2/3 of that total. So I think this is an important evaluation. Just because you answer this question in 2024, it doesn't mean you shouldn't go through that reevaluation based on all of the things that you're dealing with, and maybe it's another kid wants to come back, or maybe a kid doesn't want to come back, or maybe you decide that you want to retire earlier than you originally thought. There's a whole bunch of things that factor into this. Supply of labor, as you had mentioned. Maybe it's new technology. Right? New technology comes on. You don't even need to worry about labor anymore because the whole thing is robots. Well, that can change your answer to that question as well. But you need to continually go through and reevaluate that whole decision. Hey, Pete, tonight we're not talking wheat tonight on the Agronomist. I'm sorry, buddy. It's just listen. I tried. Lindsay said no. So tonight, they're talking about canola. So the 3 ways to bump canola yields on the Agronomist. And tonight's guests are Brunel Sabrin of Antera Agronomy, as well as Jack Payne with South Country Co-op. And that's at 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain. That's 7 o'clock for everybody in Saskatchewan and Manitoba following along. And you can find it by going to the Real Agriculture YouTube channel or as well at realagriculture.com/live. So it'll be a great discussion tonight, all about canola yield. Pete, I expect some winter canola questions. Okay, you got to represent from the east.
I will be in the chat, and I will be firing those winter canola questions. And by the way, while we were chatting, because I wasn't 100% sure on that cold tolerance of winter canola, looks like winter canola can withstand about minus 18 Celsius if it's hardened off.
Wow!
And so that minus 19, we're getting close to where it might be a challenge.
No kidding. Okay, Pete, hey, have yourself a great week, and we'll talk to you again next week, okay?
Super, thanks, Shaun. I'll be in South Dakota. It's going to be even colder there than in Ontario.
Yeah, dress warm, my friend. Dress warm. Okay, big shout out to Vaderstad, today's show sponsor. Make sure you go to vaderstad.com. And if you have any feedback, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio.
Thank you for downloading this episode of the RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by AIM EC Herbicide from FMC. Whether applied with glyphosate or another labeled tank mix partner, fast-acting AIM EC Herbicide is the go-to tank mix product for the hottest burn-off of the toughest weeds. Start out clean this spring with AIM EC Herbicide.